Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Stock Durbar with MarketSmith India's team. So I hope my voice is clear and you are able to see the Nifty 50s chart along with some annotations. Yeah, just a couple of confirmations will be fine. Yes. Okay, great. So we'll be starting in next 30 seconds. I think some people are still joining the room. So let everybody be in and then we can start today's session. Okay, so let's begin the session. Very good evening to you all again. And yes, I already see some questions that are getting put in the box. So please wait. I think first 10-15 minutes. Let's discuss some macros and few of the sectoral indices, and then the floor will be open to your questions. So this is how generally we do in the stock Durbar. So those who all are new, please wait for some 10-15 minutes before we open the floor for the questions. Okay, so if you look at Nifty's chart, so there has been an excellent rally. So after making a low of around 15,180, was almost 2,000 point, I think yes, 2,800 points की rally वहाँ से already आ चुकी है, and we are very close to 18,000. So since last two sessions, that's yesterday and today, we went very close to the 18,000 mark, but yes, we are not able to move above that mark. But the good part is कि closing day high पे हो रहा है. So it is not something like, after moving higher, you see that the Nifty is closing near the day's low or the stocks are closing near the day's low. So if you look at last many sessions, so the winning streak has been an excellent one. So just to clarify, the pink line over here is the 10 EMA, that is the short term moving average. ये green है वो 21 EMA है, DMA sorry. The black is 200, right? And the red one at the bottom is the 50-day moving average. So yes, we are almost 8.5% above the 50-day moving average, and this is not usually the case. This is very rare. Generally, 5-6% से ज़्यादा on an average. I was looking at some data of last few years. हम जाते नहीं हैं. But 2020 में जब वो कोविड वाला फॉल आया था और वहां से मार्केट रिवर्स किया, and then there was that rally from that 10,000 to 15,000 level. तो वहां पे ऐसा हुआ था कि 9%, 10%, 50 DMA से extend किया था market. Last year also it happened in 2021 once that market extended almost 9% from its 50-day moving average. But generally this phenomena is not a very regular one, but yes, this rally this time is very strong. And the good part is that firstly the volume is coming, and secondly the second thing to note is the closing is near the day's high. Plus now the 50 DMS started, moving higher. See, till over here it was moving lower, but now the pace of moving higher has increased. And in fact, the 21 DMA is now almost close to 17,200 level. So this is good thing. The another important thing is, so the follow through day, जहाँ से हम confirm करते हैं कि okay अभी market confirm uptrend में आ गया है, which gives you a very good sign that a potential rally can be there in the market. So follow through day को almost एक महीना हो गया है, and in that 1 month span we see there is only one distribution day. So this is very positive because distribution day indicates the weakness in the market, that is 0.2% fall on a volume higher than previous session. But ऐसा अभी सिर्फ एक बार हुआ है, and that also somewhere over here almost 2-3 weeks back. So this is something very positive in the market. So yes, follow through day, there is a question. So follow through day is 1.5% around gain on a volume which is higher than previous session. So जब market bottom form करने का try करता है, तो वहां पे 3 दिन तक we will look for attempted rally. So when we see Nifty is able to hold a particular low for 3 consecutive sessions, right? Then we look for something called as FTD, that is follow through day. and that came on I think 18th or 19th July if I'm not wrong. And yes, from there since 1 month has been a very strong rally. Okay. So technically, Nifty looks quite strong. There's no, major sign of weakness. The distribution day count is low. The closing is near the day's high, so not a problem. One thing to look for is, so Nifty is quite extended from its 50 DMA, almost 8.5%, and that I discussed that it's not regular basis. Generally, 5 to 6% is the average during a good time. But yes, now the extension is good, so there might be some sideways movement or consolidation, which is always healthy. जैसे कि यहाँ पे हुआ था निफ्टी में, right? There was some 4 5 days of consolidation around same level पे निफ्टी का closing था. It moved sideways and again the rally began. So something like this is always positive. The second thing, if something like this happens, as I am indicating over here, कि हाँ एक दो दिन थोड़ा पुल बैक आता है लोअर वॉल्यूम पे, and the short term moving average, that is the 10 EMA, that is holding. See guys, one thing to note, generally 50 DMA is very strong in the stocks as well as the index. But जब market इतना run किया है, then ideally your focus should shift for the shorter term moving average and more specifically to 21. So for index as well as stocks. So आपके portfolio में कोई stocks हो गए, the stocks that you might be trading. So for them, trailing stop loss near 21 DMA becomes very, very important when the market is extended at such a high. So now, not only the technicals, but I think the global macros are supporting the markets. So after the lower inflation in the US, so expectation was 8.7 और जब 8.5 है उसके बाद से market ने और momentum built up किया. So yesterday there was one of very crucial macro event. The Fed का minutes of meeting बाहर आया था. So there you should note that they have clearly mentioned that there are little evidence. So they have not spoken that there are evidence of inflation falling, but they have specifically mentioned that there are little evidences of inflation growing, inflation cooling off. The second thing is like they have not refrained from rate hikes, so the rate hikes will continue, but I think the pace will be slower. So that's what the Fed is indicating in the minutes of meeting. The other global important phenomena that you should look at is the Europe. So in Europe, the energy prices are soaring. जो रशिया यूक्रेन का क्राइसिस है और उसकी वजह से जो गैस सप्लाई कट हुआ है, right, from the Russia, or Europe is not buying the sufficient gas from Russia, both the things are there. तो उसकी वजह से जो उनका स्पेशली जो मेटल इंडस्ट्री है, जो उनके प्लांट्स है, like for steel industry, the fertilizer, aluminum, zinc के plants है, they require a lot of energy to run their production units. But अभी energy cost, जब gas का prices are at multi-year high, then it becomes very tough for them to sustain at this level. And that's why since last few days you might be listening that कहीं पे यूरोप पे जिंक का फैक्ट्री बंद हुआ, कहीं पे एल्यूमिनियम का बंद हुआ, even the steel producers are under pressure. Then when you come to China, वहां पे भी थोड़ा स्लो डाउन है. इनफैक्ट देयर आर सम ड्रॉट्स इन फ्यू ऑफ द रीजन्स व्हिच आर वेरी क्रूशियल फॉर मेटल्स. उसकी वजह से उनका हाइड्रो इलेक्ट्रिक पावर का सप्लाई कम हो रहा है. एंड देयर आल्सो 1 या 2 वीक का जो मेटल की इंडस्ट्रीज है वहां पे लैग चल रहा है, मतलब वहां पे शटडाउन है 1 2 वीक का. सो all this problem, so जो inventory है metals की, especially in Europe, that is coming very low, and the factories are not able to run due to higher cost. Not only in Europe, in India, US, हर जगह पे वो pressure तो बन ही रहा है, but I think Europe is more in a problem, specifically when the winter is about to follow. So the government also needs to preserve the energy, and they can't subsidize it now. They can't give a free hand to industries now because they need to supply it to their people, especially in the winter. So the problem in Europe, that is important to track. Now, if we come to India, so there's no major issue as far as our macros are concerned. July ka CPI hai, that was somewhere around 6.7%. So now we are below 7, and जो 2023 का average estimate है that is somewhere around 6.4 6.5. The consensus are estimating that it will come down. So इस बार majorly क्या हुआ, food inflation थोड़ा नीचे था. The secondly, the IIP growth was good. I think it was more than 12 13%. The electric production was up almost 16 to 17%. Manufacturing was up 12 to 13%. Mining was also up around 7 to 8%. So no major issues as far as the industrial growth in India is concerned. As far as the inflation is also a bit lower. The second good thing is energy prices. So now you can see the last 1 month average agar aap crude oil ka nikaloge, so it is just below 100. So that is a bit of relief क्योंकि अभी तक 105, 1010 का जो crude का average आ रहा था monthly. So that was always a pressure on India on CAD as well as the inflation. But now if it remains stable somewhere around 90, 95, then it's a positive for India. So few other macros are also in place, especially the rainfall, which is very crucial for food in India and food inflation. So the rainfall is almost normal. कई जगह पे वो बढ़ गया है. So if you specifically look at data, so there are 36 divisions in India. So out of those 36 divisions, so only 6 are having a below average rainfall till I think 11th or 12th August. 16 divisions are having normal rainfall and 14 are having excess. So not evenly distributed. So इस बार rainfall अच्छा है, but distribution थोड़ा uneven है. But overall अगर reservoir level की बात करें, water level की, so there's no major issue कि हाँ rainfall की वजह से इस साल problem हो, ऐसा कुछ notable issues अभी तक नहीं है. So that is also positive. So this was from the macro front. So we discussed US, Europe, India. Now let's discuss a couple of sectors and then we go to your stock specific questions. So let's start with FMCG this time. So yes, very good rally in the FMCG, especially over the last 1 month. Right. So see, there are 2-3 things about the FMCG and the consumption sector. Firstly, the volume growth is good. So there is no major issue around the volume growth. उन लोगों ने price hikes भी लिए हैं. I think last quarter में, last couple of months में काफी सारे price hikes हुए हैं in FMCG and consumption industry. And now the good part is कि जो raw material prices एक peak पे थे, वहां से थोड़े cool off हुए हैं. So ऐसा नहीं है कि अभी तुरंत very quickly they will lower the prices again. That won't happen that quickly. So that's why it will be very good for their margin. So you might see in this current quarter or maybe in the next quarter, if the raw material cost remains a bit stable or on the lower side, then it will benefit the FMCG and the consumption industry. Not only the margins, but I think the demand outlook is also good. And I think demand is not an issue, especially urban is quite well. And if the rainfalls are normal and the sowing is good, then you might see during the festive season the rural demand might also pick up, and that will be very good for the FMCG as well as the consumption sector as a whole. And if you look at the commentaries, so I think all the results of the industries are out. So mostly जो major notable companies है like Asian Paints, where you can see the other HUL and also उनका positive commentaries be quite positive है. Like Asian Paint is still saying that the demand is resilient and the pickup in the housing sector, the construction, the infra, right? So everything is working well for the consumption industry. There are few of the problems. The raw material cost, again there will be some increase, then there might be an issue, but overall it's a good setup for the industry. You can see it is trading near the high. So today also it was up around 0.5%, but I think the today's action is not still captured in this chart, so it's not a live one. But yes, today also the index was up around 0.5%, the FMCG index. So very good setup over here. If you look at a few other important ones, Nifty Bank, yeah, this was the sector, especially I think, and the disclaimer remains that when we discuss these levels in the Nifty sectors of stock, it's just for the educational purpose, and please do not consider it as an investment advice. So over here also, Nifty Bank also today was a good day for the banking stocks as well. So especially Kotak Mahindra Bank, helped not only the Nifty बैंक बट ऑल्सो द निफ्टी 50 इंडेक्स. सो बैंक ने रेगुलरली सपोर्ट दिया, वो जो आज निफ्टी का 850 के अराउंड का लेवल था वो होल्ड करने में, वहां से रिवर्स होने में. सो वेरी गुड सेटअप इन द बैंक्स. So we have discussed this multiple times that the advance growth is good. उनका जो निम है वो स्टेबल है, it is growing. जो क्रेडिट कॉस्ट है वो थोड़ा कम होता जा रहा है. Yes, though there is issue in that treasury profit, वहाँ पे थोड़ा प्रेशर है because yields increase हो रहे हैं. I think GSEC जो yield है तो वहाँ वो काफी बढ़ गया है, ऑलमोस्ट 70-80 बिप्स, सॉरी 40-50 बिप्स. जो कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड्स का yield है वो भी 70-80 बिप्स बढ़ गए हैं. सो वहाँ पे ट्रेजरी में थोड़ा प्रॉफिट का pressure था, but overall there is no issue. The business is very strong for the banks. The credit growth is good, and I think the advances are uh, good, and also the credit cost is a bit on the lower side, so not a problem for the banks as far as that is concerned. And you can see the index is on a very strong rally. So I think this leg is very strong, almost from 32 290 to almost it is moving towards the 40,000. So 7 to 8,000 points of rally. So this is an excellent move from the banks. So now let's do one thing. Let's move towards your question, and then in between, whenever we find that we can discuss a sector, we will come up with that. Otherwise, our focus will be on to give you a quality reply as far as your questions are concerned. We will try to answer as many as possible. One thing, please do not keep on repeating the question, because तो पूरा junk बन जाता है वहाँ पे, तो it becomes difficult to scroll. And in the room we have Mayuresh Joshi, the head of our research, and also my colleague Wakar is in the room. So we three will try to answer your queries, and as many as possible. Thank you. Okay, so a lot of queries are coming. So we'll start in the next 30 seconds. So there's a question on GNFC chart. So yes, the GNFC is forming a cup with handle pattern. Very true about that. But see, one thing over the problem over here is the sixth stage base. So this is too much, I think. So we generally don't go beyond 3 as far as the stock addition is concerned. See, this is the game of probability. अभी कभी ऐसा होता है कि कोई स्टॉक, जैसे कि once upon a time there was बजाज फिनांस की, वो 6-7 बेसिस बनाया. कोई एक आध ऐसा स्टॉक होता है मार्केट में every year that builds 5-6-7 bases. But generally, any base that is above the third base is very risky. So in fact, third is also a little risky. But if you see the other parameters are well, the growth drivers are good, fundamental support अच्छा करते हैं, then you might consider third base. But breakout from the stage 4, 5, 6 base is very risky to have in the portfolio, क्योंकि जब भी मार्केट थोड़ा अंडर प्रेशर आता है एक हाई से, तो in those kind of situation, these are the stocks that gets quickly beaten down. So no two ways about the quality of stock that GNFC is. The fundamentals are very good. You can see almost more than 100% growth in EPS for last few quarters. Number of fund holding is also very good. I think the increase is excellent. RS rating, buyer demand, everything is good. But one problem that we are having with this chart is like it's a 6-stage base, and we don't go for such a high stage base. Okay, next we can discuss. So yes, Bhaskar has a comment. The last swing high of 18,114 might act as a resistance, isn't it? It might. There might be a chances that it can act as a resistance, but yes, it's not always that you consider. So that the other thing to consider over that is the trend line. अगर आप last 3 का trend line देखो, the first there was around 18,600, then 18,400, then this 18,114. तो अगर वो ट्रेंड लाइन ड्रॉ करोगे तो वहां से निफ्टी ऑलरेडी ऊपर क्रॉस हो चुका है. बट यस, यू शुड कीप दीज लेवल्स इन माइंड एंड बी केयरफुल अराउंड दोज लेवल्स. अदरवाइज it's not a very strong level, but it should be kept under consideration. Then we have ICICI Bank discussion. Okay, so before discuss ICICI Bank, I want to make it clear that the disclaimer that this is the part of our model portfolio. The stock is in, we have added it a couple of days back in our model portfolio when it broke out from the stage 3 consolidation base. So yes, ICICI Bank, very good story. So if you consider last 5-6 years, so उन लोगों का जो पूरा कॉर्पोरेट बैंकिंग से दे हैव मूव टुवर्ड्स द रिटेल बैंकिंग. जो उनका कॉर्पोरेट बुक बड़ा होता था, अभी रिटेल बुक इज वेरी गुड. और जो एडवांसेस ग्रोथ है दैट इज वेरी हाई एज फार एज द रिटेल्स आर कंसर्न. एंड लो रिस्क वाला जो लोन्स होता है दैट इज आल्सो वेरी हाई. प्लस देयर निम इम्प्रूव नाउ. निम इज ऑलमोस्ट 4% फॉर आईसीआईसीआई बैंक, विच इज वेरी गुड. जो उनका एडवांसेस का रेट है वो भी बढ़ता जा रहा है. सो दे आर गेटिंग द नो द मनी इजीली. द सेकंड मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट इन एडिशन टू दीज फंडामेंटल्स अबाउट द बैंक इज जो उनका डिजिटल स्पेस है. दे हैव बीन लीडर ओवर दैट. अगर आप टोल टोल पे देखो, ई जो अभी कलेक्शन होता है, सो ऑलमोस्ट 38% का उनका मार्केट शेयर है वहां पे. एंड इफ यू इवन लुक एट द देयर ऐप, जो आई डायरेक्ट है उनका आईसीआईसीआई बैंक का ऐप है, वहां पे नॉन आईसीआईसीआई बैंक कस्टमर का भी बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग ग्रोथ है. ऑलमोस्ट 58% ग्रोथ ऑन अ वाई बेसिस. So not only their own customer, but the app, the user interface, and the facilities are very decent one for a digital banking space. And that's why non ICICI banking customers are also moving towards their app. And this gives a potential to convert them to the customer, or to get some good fees out of those things, and their revenues are increasing. So overall very good ग्रोथ स्टोरी फॉर आईसीआईसीआई बैंक. जो पिछले 5-6 साल में उन लोगों ने ग्रोथ ट्रेजेक्टरी दिखाया है दैट इज वेरी गुड. Asset quality improvement is also very notable, and technically yes, it broke out from a very good base. So it consolidated for a very long time, and it has broken out from the consolidation based on the higher volume. So if you can see the accumulation over here, that is strong just before the breakout. And यहाँ पे जब थोड़ा वीक था स्टॉक, तो वहाँ पे इतना खास कोई वॉल्यूम भी नहीं आया था. जब सेलिंग वॉल्यूम वाज नॉट दैट great. So that's why the buyer demand, the accumulation is of A. The EPS of 95 is excellent, and you can see even on such a high base, the number of fund holdings are increasing. So almost 2.5% increase in number of fund holdings, and 3.3% increase in share held by funds. So already एक high base है. ऐसा नहीं है कि ये small cap company नहीं है कि 15-20 fund है. Almost more than 1800 different funds, small and large from globally, schemes are already investing in this stock. So yes, it's a overall good setup, and currently it is trading in an ideal buy zone.
Rushit, Vakare, can I take some queries?
Sure.
Yeah. Can you give me chart for Vardhaman Textiles, VTL? I mean, before discussing about the chart, I mean, let's discuss why, I mean, the stock has been falling in terms of the fundamental scenario and the demand scenario. So the demand, I mean, tracking to the recent last few results. If we talk about the textile industry, it was booming because of initially the rise in cotton prices, which led to, I mean, high margin for the spinning players as well. They enjoyed margins in upward to the long-term average. So majorly for Vardhaman as well, the long-term average of margin is around 18 to 22%. And they were in the peak, they were experiencing margins of upwards of 24-25%. And that started falling in the last couple of quarters when demand was started happening, and even your cotton prices started dwindling. So talking about the last quarter, I mean, it was a fairly subdued quarter for them, where your EBITDA margins came at around 18.7%. Sales growth was around 46, 47% on a lower base if we talk about it. And why this is happening is mainly because, I mean, the major demand, there's some demand was happening, and their management is expecting that demand to remain subdued for the next 4 to 5 months. And even Bangladesh, which is a major textile player, which had been good for the last couple of years, in the last few months as well, Bangladesh is also experiencing lower demand. And management has indicated that in Q2 FY23 as well, that is the next quarter, margins are expected to remain subdued because your cotton prices are still falling. And from Q3 FY23 or maybe Q4, they expect that margins can stabilize. So I mean, the stock can go some period of consolidation or some major decline as well, because I mean there is no positive trigger at the moment for the stock. And if you look at it, I mean the stock did try to break out from a cup with handle base, and from that point, if you look at it, the stock is nearly 46% of its height. When the major, I mean, your Nifty index or your even the small cap indices have reclaimed their 50 DMA, 200 DMA. The stock is trading well below its 200 DMA. The 200 DMA is around 400. And talking about, I mean, the main thing that we always talk about is the price strength, and with the price strength, is accumulation happening or not? If you look at the falls, I mean, the falls was majorly with the volumes, and price strength of 10 is certainly not good for any stock, if you want to consider, I mean, going ahead with that stock. The other, Rushid, would like to discuss is Bector Foods. So overall, on the technical front, if we look at it, I mean, the chart looks better than the previous chart that we discussed. But the major problem here is that the stock is not forming any base. On the positive front, you could see some kind of accumulation in the last few months. I mean, pre-results and post the results, where I mean the stock reclaimed its key moving averages, your 50 DMA, your 200 DMA, as well as that even the RS line started trending higher. Why? Because if we talk about it on the result front was really good. I mean, on a YOY front, the revenue grew by around 33%. I mean, there was really good growth of high teens in your domestic business, and even the export business was really good. However, the EBITDA margins was below the guided range. I mean, the EBITDA margins came at around 10.4%, which is still below the guided range of around 14 to 15%. So, but still, but if, looking at from the O'Neill perspective or from the O'Neill lens, the EPS strength, I mean, is really good. And even the Q1 results was kind of at par if you look at it. But the stock has still got to do some run up to do, maybe consolidate around this 200 DMA kind of range, form a new base. And with the new base, if it's able to accumulate, and the RS line also is kind of poor at 55. So even if that kind can show some kind of a strength, then probably from some days or some months down the line can be a trackable stock or stock to look out for. The other stock, Rushit, we can go is Vinnati Organics. Yeah. So if we talk about Vinnati Organics, the stock is forming a stage one double bottom base and is kindly trading in the ideal buy range. I mean, it did breakout, but I mean, what the problem with the breakout was? Am I pointing it right? Yeah. So what the problem with the breakout was that it broke out, and it broke out on heavy volumes, but post that breakout, it retraced back into the base on such a high volume, which is never a good sign. And if post that breakout, if you look at it, the RS line has been falling, your RS rating has been falling, and overall, I mean, that has been the problem for the stock. But on the flip side, if you look at it, the stock is not going like well below its pivot, or it's still holding its near-term moving averages of like 10 EMA on the 21 DMA. So all that is a really good thing. So what an ideal thing can happen for the stock from this point in time is that the stock can uh, as it's resting near the 10 EMA at the moment, maybe like just below the 10 EMA, can retrace to the 21 DMA as well. And from there, if rebounds on an really above average volume, and that can and not like last time where it closed in the lower half or the lower decile of the candle. It should close like on a very positive front, maybe the top 25 percentile or the top decile of the candle. That can be a really good sign for the stock that okay, that the stock has really probably rebroken out with strong volumes and strong price action at that point of time.
Thanks, Vakar.
Yeah.
So let's discuss a couple of more. One, and discuss control prints. Yeah, the stock is very close to its breakout. In fact, briefly intraday पे वो pivot level के ऊपर आया है. 494 is the pivot, and I think on August 12th, Friday, yes, it made a high of around 499. So there was a brief intraday breakout, but it failed that day because it again closed below the pivot. And you can see for the next 3 sessions, the stock is closing lower. See, overall, it has a good story. It's a very small stock, just 770 crore of market cap. So ideally, not a good idea to go behind it. Generally, if you look at the business setup, the company is in the manufacturing of coding and marking solution in India. So the printers and the markings and codings for the different industries. So they saw, I think, almost all the industries, जो cements है, metals, chemicals, FMCG, pharmaceuticals, सारी इंडस्ट्री को ये सर्व करता है. Overall business model is good, but I think this stocks needs to be given some time, to grow a bit more. As far as the number of funds, also, if you can see, there are only 8 funds, and you don't see any notable funds over here in the stock. If you look at the earnings, not a major issue. Earning setup is quite well. You can see 30, 25, 30% of growth on a QOQ basis, YOY basis. So that's fine. Not an issue. ROE of 17 is good. The EPS strength, the buyer demand. So overall, the setup is good, but the only risk is it's a very small stock. There's 770 crore of market cap, and the number of fund holding is very less for our threshold. टेक्निकली सेटअप अच्छा है, बट यहाँ पे ये प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है. देखो, नॉट ओनली वंस, इफ यू कैन सी, जो हाई पे आके वो तुरंत अपना गेन्स गिव अप कर रहा है. हियर आल्सो 1 2 3 4 fifth time this has happened, I think, since last 2-3 months. So it is not able to move strongly higher after the breakout, and in fact it is not able to give a clean breakout. So wait for some time, wait it to gain some more business, increase the revenues as well as the market capitalization, and let some fund come in the stock. Then next we can discuss APL Apollo. So yes, over here the question is related to this failed breakout. So it broke out from the stage 2 consolidation base, but the breakout was a failed one. The stock was not able to move higher after the breakout. In fact, yes, there was some good volume during the breakout, but I think for the next 3 sessions, it failed. And a short-term moving average उसने breach किया है. So next to look out for is the green line, that is the 21 DMA. But if some of you might have taken an entry of above the pivot point, breakout के बाद अगर आपने entry ली है, then the best thing is to follow a strict stop loss. So at O'Neill, we tend to follow 7 to 8% of strict stop loss. So that is what you can do if you have taken an entry. And if not, then I think you should wait. You should wait for 21 DMA or 50 DMA rebound for the stock. And जब भी re-breakout होता है, I think Waka discussed few things about re-breakout. तो जब भी ये re-breakout होगा, you can look at the stock. If you look on this on the weekly chart, So yes, I think since September 2021 it is moving in the sideway manner. So यहाँ पे एक cup with handle बना था, उसके बाद अभी consolidation base बना है, but it is not able to move above a certain level. So every time it is getting restricted around its 1100 level. So give it some time, let it gain some strength. So overall, it's a very good story. Apl Apollo, the number of fund holding is very good. Earnings इनका consistently improve हो रहा है, right? Their business is also गुड। जो सेक्टर में वो काम कर रहे हैं दैट इज रियली रियली गुड। जो उनका ट्यूब्स और पाइप्स का बिजनेस है दैट इज फाइन। सो नो टू वेज अबाउट द स्टोरी एज वेल एज द फंडामेंटल्स, बट यस वेट फॉर सम टेक्निकल सेटअप टू इम्प्रूव। आरएस लाइन भी थोड़ा इम्प्रूव हो जाए यहाँ से एंड री ब्रेकआउट आफ्टर सम टेस्टिंग मूविंग एवरेज, so that will be the best thing to watch out for.
Rushil, we can take G shipping. I think has been asked a couple of times earlier.
Okay.
Now container rates have been going downwards, guys. So one must remember that what you saw during the COVID period when container rates had gone through the roof across sectors and across routes has come off significantly. Within certain segments, within its segments that it operates out of, certain rates are still holding out. The aging of ships is largely okay. The scrapping for the industry in general has not increased that significantly, but the supply is also not increasing that significantly, and hence the prices should stabilize. The debt levels tad bit higher, if I'm not mistaken, but I think that should be reasonable compared to the balance sheet size, and it's doing relatively okay in terms of all parameters that we see on O'Neill, right? So fund holdings have been good. In fact, they've been increasing. The only aspect, if I'm not mistaken, Rushit, is the ROE, right, which is a little bit lower.
Yes, the ROE is somewhere around 12.
Yeah. So I think that should again be reflective in terms of earnings, but largely if you probably look at the entire sector setup, so on and so forth, I think it's looking pretty good. Only the size, as Rushit was mentioning, right, in his opening remarks, it would be to monitor closely the 21-day moving average, because if that gets breached with heavy volumes, then you might have a fall till the 50-day moving average, which can be quite substantial. So in markets like these, where volatility is now persisting at a pretty high level, monitoring, obviously the 50-day monitoring is very, very important as per O'Neill. But where moves have happened for certain stocks, monitoring the 21 DMA is a very important aspect to be kept in mind.
Mayuresh, can you discuss, like there are questions for you for to discuss the gas sector related. So maybe if you can put couple of points around that.
No, so two things are happening, guys. I think you have to see oil and you have to see gas, right? So energy as a basket. Rushit, I was hearing him out. I think crude has largely come off around that $92-$94 a barrel mark. There is expectations that government might cut the windfall tax even further in their 15-day of review. But the earnings for both upstream and downstream companies remain extremely, extremely volatile. Gas prices, specifically what you've seen in Europe at this point of time, you look at the German electricity index. I mean, you can just Google it, you can find that out as well. No need to have a Bloomberg terminal for that. Has it its all-time high level at this point of time? A lot of manufacturing units are shutting down because gas prices have gone through the roof. So if I just equate the gas prices in Europe at this point of time to oil, just a comparative check, right? The current gas prices are anyway close to an equivalent of $350 to $400 a barrel. So in that sense, running viable businesses with such high elevated gas costs are not going to be feasible. The second element is that winter is going to be around the corner. So I think we're talking about August end right now. October end, winter should be hitting Europe pretty hard. And what kind of supplies actually come through and from which quarters of the world? Because if Russia probably maintains its stance of maintaining its supply, where large amount of supplies will be required, both in Europe and a lot of the north hemisphere based countries, including parts of China, which largely should not be affected, but for gas. But Japan as well, which also does a lot of LNG imports, even LNG prices should start moving higher. So is there a recessionary risk because of gas prices within the energy basket? I think that seems to be a very high possibility and a probability because of these two factors combined together. Supplies might actually not be able to meet demand to the full extent possible, and therefore the pricing might even move higher as winter approaches. How does that affect Indian companies? I think we're largely importers, right, of gas. So when you talk about oil and gas space, so the upstream and downstream is basically crude. ONGC does produce gas to a certain extent, but largely I think the pricing that happens, again, there is no guarantee, right, in what controls the government can probably bring in terms of retail pricing or domestic pricing, even if gas prices probably will move higher at an international level. So I think the full benefits might not translate into that. On the other hand, if you're probably looking at Singapore GRMs on the refining side of the business, I think that has come off quite significantly. I think what a lot of analysts are pegging through globally is that as demand start coming down, the reflection of what is being seen in crude, what has been seen in forward contracts for a lot of commodities, though there has been a pullback in commodities, and what is really happening in China. I was reading an author who probably who has done extensive study in terms of real estate across the globe. His sense is that China is in serious trouble at this point of time when it comes to mortgage players, developers, bankers, and retail depositors as well. So I think there are some issues emanating from that part of the angle as well, and therefore the commodity angle or the commodity stocks, both in terms of forward contracts and looking inward in terms of how demand supply dynamics might be, can face this inherent outside risk. For Indian stocks in general, I think government interventions are far too many, and therefore I think we largely avoid upstream and downstream companies. For city gas distribution companies, obviously the announcement that has been made, if gas prices start moving northwards, an allocation of more administered price mechanism gas, the APM gas as we call it, it will still get impacted because every 6 months the review of pricing will happen, and if these prices move higher, though there have been cuts in CNG, PNG by Mahanagar Gas in the last few days, I think how sustainable that will be in lieu of a rising scenario. It will obviously be passed on. What that has an impact in terms of consumption patterns when it specifically comes to CNG or PNG as well, by using alternative cooking fuels, that needs to be seen. So I think there is these risk factors that can play upon upstream, downstream. Midstream companies should be relatively okay with companies like GAIL because they're basically converters and suppliers through the transmission lines. But even then, I think the entire perspective in terms of taking some amount of hit and not a complete pass through, not being inflationary, if that probably happens, remains an outside risk. So, yeah, I think all these outside risk factors is something that needs to be seen in terms of the oil and gas sector and the ongoing crisis. India has imported significant amount of oil. So to that extent, what we are seeing is the dynamics in terms of our trade deficit should be relatively better off, not buying oil at elevated prices, but at discounted prices, even at the current juncture. But I think the outside joker in the pack might be the gas pricing and the dynamics surrounding that, which can have a cascading effect on sectors, industries, and because it is highly regulated, specifically on the oil and gas space, as far as India is concerned, really leaving aside Reliance, which is majorly again a refining play, but again GRMs will probably take a hit there. So I think it still remains circumstance and outside risk to remain for the sector as well. You can
Thank
continue.
you.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mahesh. Rishit, can I take some queries?
Sure.
Can you give me Tek Packaging? Saw it a couple of times. Yes, so the stock is accumulating really well during the consolidation base. And on the right hand side of the base, if we look at it before breaking out, like in the last few days, there was good amount of volumes and good price action as well. On the O'Neill front as well, it ticks, if not all boxes, but most of the boxes. I mean, share held by funds are increasing. EPS strength is really great at 90. Price strength is there 86. But the only problem at the moment, who's looking fresh entry into the stock, is that the stock is 15% from the pivot, and this is 15% from the pivot in 12 days. So it's been a really rapid move in the stock. If we talk about it, what led to the movement? was the very strong performance in Q1, which was led by top line growth of around 55%. Margins was kind of subdued because of high cost inventory. But if you look at the management commentary from the stock, that was the real positive. The Moltech has confirmed around three projects, and even the fourth one as well, which is lead to like 40 crores of revenue in the coming time. Along with they expecting good demand in the lubricant business as well, which is expected to increase from Q2 onwards. I mean, and even in order to cater to the demand, they've increasing the capacity in plants in Mysore, Vizag, especially to meet, paint players' demand. That is, they have a dedicated plant for Asian Paints and one for Berger Paints as well. Going forward as well, and in the current scenario, they expect to pass on the raw material prices, and they've made changes on a monthly basis rather than on a quarterly basis to probably able to faster pass on the prices. And even with new segments such as the OTC pharma, they expect the EBITDA per kg for the OTC pharma in the range of 180 to 200 per kg, and paints and lubes to be around 30 to 40 per kg, and other food segment to at 80 to 120 per kg. So overall, a really good story on the fundamental front, and similarly can be seen on the technical front with the price volume action as well. This the problem is that 15% from the pivot, which doesn't allow entry according to the O'Neill perspective. Just that if the stock rests around the 21 DMA or the 50 DMA, and then retraces back with above average volume, probably an alternate buying point can be looked at for the stock, if you think from that angle. The other stock Rishit would like to discuss is Greenpanel. So, I mean, what probably I would like to discuss with this stock is Rishit, the stage count is reset, right? It should reset. It's one at the moment. Yeah, it's one. So, like always, we used to talk about like stage 4 and 5 and above the late stage basis. The last stage that it formed, it was a stage 4 base that it broke out from a stage 4 base, a cup base, and it did rally, but as so you never know like what kind of concerns can happen. Sometimes macro concerns can happen. Sometimes concerns related, company specific related concerns can also happen for any particular company. But if on the positive front, we still look at it like the stock, I mean, the stage count has got reset at the moment. I mean, on the technical front, lot of catching up and lot of building has to do at the moment. You can see, I mean, the RS line has been falling. The RS rating is very low at the moment, at 64. I mean, the problem was not really with the result. I mean, this result was really good in terms of overall operating margins at 27-28%, driven by your MDF segment. The MDF margins grew by around 800 bips. Top line growth was really good. But what made probably the markets jittery was that they're expecting headwinds in demand due to your interest rate hike. So if the interest rates hike happens, and interest rates rights are happening, so that would affect your home loans. And if your real estate sector is will get affected, then the demand for the Greenpanel like to be get affected. And overall, they're seeing RM cost inflation persisting in the coming time. So overall, they were kind of cautious, and with your MDF margins currently at around 34, 35, they are expecting FY23 EBITDA margin, your MDF EBITDA margins to be the range of 27-28%, which is highly bearish at the moment. So probably that bearish outlook is the reason probably that has led to, I mean, the fall in your green panel industry. So overall, let's see if in the coming months the stock is able to find a pace or not.
Just to add to Vakar's point as well, if you look at Greenlam, Greenpanel, all these home improvement players, in the US, a couple of companies actually reported strong set of numbers. So if you look at Amazon's numbers are surprisingly good. In fact, Home Depot, which is one of the most important players for home improvement, had a fantastic set of numbers. So I think number of home sales in the US have obviously gone down, are going down as we speak, but home improvement is improving. So you can probably then assume that a lot of internal developments as far as your existing homes are concerned are being carried out in this post period or post COVID periodicity as well. So I think just a pointer that I just wanted to point out for home improvement.
Thank you, Mahesh. Again, like something like related to home improvement, I like to take is Kajaria Ceramics. So again. So yes, again, the stage count is reset and the stock is forming stage 1 cup with a handle base. And I mean, on the right hand side, if you still look at it, the stock did accumulate well on the right hand side of the cup. But what was the problem in this formation of this cup is that when the stock was falling during this sharp fall, the sharp fall was on really high volumes, on above average volumes. And I mean, the depth of the stock, I mean, the cup with handle is too deep, and the stock is still 14% off highs, which is not a good sign. And overall, if we talk about it, even the price RS line or the RS rating is kind of poor at 57 at the moment. But if you look at the results, I mean, the results was really good. I mean, the company reported around a 53% YOY growth in sales, with the net realizations improving, volumes improving. I mean, what probably what Mahesh was saying at the moment. I mean, two different managements, two different segments, and two different commentary related to the same end users. So, I mean, what they are witnessing is like they're still witnessing strong real estate. Offtake demand from the real estate sector, specifically from the tier two and the smaller city, while they experience metros experiencing a healthy demand. What probably Mahesh was talking about. Metros are probably giving healthy replacement demand for the company. And talking about the gas prices have been volatile. What even Mahesh has discussed, and even the average gas prices what they incurred was on a higher front, and if we talk about the Morbi sector, which is mainly caters to the export demand from the country, around in the month of August, like in the management commentary, they've noted that around 80% Morbi plants had closed, and 85 capacity is expected to be non-operational. I mean, even your Kajaria outsources a certain segment of its volumes, but I mean, they're expecting their outsourced capacity to be operational and even increasing stocks in the coming period. The overall guidance in terms of volume for the company is still really strong at 15 to 20% growth in volumes for the next 20 years, next 2 years, sorry, next 2 years, with capex at around 200 to 250 crores for every year. But I mean, if you look at it, this time they have refrained from giving a margin guidance because of the volatile gas prices, which is a high component of their cost.
Yeah, thanks, Maka. So there is one question that how to interpret the number of funds See, the number of funds that are the total number of funds that are invested in a company and the shares held by fund. So it is possible that the current fund, if there is some fund holding in the company, so their holding increase. So that's why there might be sometime it happens that कि हाँ number of shares held by fund बढ़ रहे हैं. Just in case of Kajaria, right? The question is that it's 1% almost increase in a share held by fund. But क्या होगा? Number of funds are down 7.5%. So that is possible that the funds are reducing, but the current holders might have increased the holding, and that's why the shares held by fund is having a positive sign. So that's the reason. So now there is also a question on Uflex.
Rushit, can we take Craftsman? Sorry to interrupt, I think.
Yeah,
And Chalet, because Saloni, I think Saloni Agrawal has been asking that. And after that, we can probably look at KPIT.
sure. So yes, let's discuss the Craftsman first. So it is forming a stage 2 consolidation base and very close to its ideal buy zone. So it gave a breakout somewhere in the end of June and the beginning of July, but there's no significant progress from that point of time. And then there was some pullback to 21 DMA, which is not a problem because the volume was little on the lower side. Then there was some sideways movement around 21 DMA. और वहां भी अगर देखें तो volume was on the lower side, so that's fine. So that's not an issue. And today it again gained some volume and tried to break out. But this problem remained again कि जो pivot zone के around है वहाँ पे high पे sustain नहीं कर पा रहा है. It is not able to sustain it near the day's high. So again I think it closed in the lower half of the day's range. And let's see the weekly chart if we get some idea. Yes. So I think this level, so around 2800, it is having a very good supply at that level. So give it some time, let it move to a new high on a higher volume. So यहाँ पे जो वो रिवर्सल दिया था somewhere around 2894.90. So let this level be taken out on a higher volume. So if that happens, then technically yes, it is in the buy zone. Now, if we look at the results, so I think there was couple of, if you see over here, the EPS growth was a bit on the negative side, but overall the earnings growth is very good. Right, and specifically this sector, this auto ancillary related sector, that is in a sweet spot, and I think most of the stocks in the sectors, even the OCMs and the OEMs and the other the stocks in the sectors are doing really well. So yeah, no two ways about the as a sector story as well as the the growth story of the company. But yes, you need to wait for some good technical confirmation over here. RS line is also a bit lagging after the breakout, so let it gain from here. Otherwise, the buyer demand and the EPS remains good, which is positive. And if someone is already holding this and taken some position just after the breakout, then I think 21 DMA is working really well for the stock. So you should follow that for as the stop loss. So that's what coming out of the chart. Yes. So second, we can discuss KPIT. There's a lot of attention to KPIT, especially after the 5-digit movement in the Tata Elxsi stock. So yes, this also caters to the little similar sector. And see, if you look at the setup over here, so after the breakout from the stage 3 consolidation base, there was a strong rally in the November and the December. And since then, it has been moving on the downside. But the stock is getting a very good support near its 200 DMA specifically. यहाँ पे हर बार वो 200 को थोड़ा breach करता है and then again it reclaims 200 DMA. So it's very sticky around its 200 DMA. So a couple of weeks back, just a second. Yeah. Yes, over here it reclaimed its 50 DMA as well as the 200 DMA, and since then after a sideways movement, now it is moving higher from that point. So technically it is good, right, for an alternative buy point because it has not breached its pivot. So this is the alternate buy point strategy कि अगर last base, so this is the last base, right? So उसका जो pivot level है that is somewhere around 375, 380. So वो अगर breach नहीं किया and the stock finds a good support near 5200 DM and वहां से strong volume पे reclaim करता है, then it might be considered as an alternate buy entry. And so yes, overall the fundamental for the stock is good. So EPS growth is decent, the revenue growth is more than 40-50%, ROE of 20%, the number of fund holding is increasing, but yes, the stocks are a bit on the lower side. But overall the setup is good. But see over here, it is facing some multiple resistance. So around 600 is 575 zone. So a couple of time it found resistance over here. So let it make a fresh base. So I think because it is too much extension, November में breakout हुआ था almost 7-8 months. So let's wait for some fresh base setup क्योंकि यहाँ पे consolidation कर सकता है maybe some after some higher movements at this point of time. अगर यहाँ पे कोई base बनता है and then stock breaks out, then that is something to look for. Otherwise, for the aggressive entry, yes, this the stock is very close to its alternate buy zone. So 50 DMA, 200 DMA can be considered as a downside support and the fresh entry, according to O'Neill, when it reclaims the 50 or 200 DMA on a higher volume. So Rekha is saying, please explain what is a pivot level. So yes, the pivot level is the point, the breakout point, जहाँ पे वो previously resistance मिल रहा था. So in case of consolidation base, let's take this KPIT example only. So the left side base high, so that is considered as the pivot. So over here, let's see, this is the base formation. तो यहाँ पे 685 का high बना था, right after upward movement, and then it consolidated. Again, it tried to move around that level, but yeah, it failed, and then finally it broke out from there. So this high point over here is considered as the pivot. Similarly, in cup with handle, so the point from where the handle formation start is considered as the pivot. In only cup base, the left side is considered as the pivot, and in the double bottom base, we consider the middle peak over here as the pivot point. That is the ideal buy zone starts from here. You want this point to break out on a higher volume. So that's we call pivot. Okay, there is also questions on the Tata Power. Maybe we can take one or two and then close the session. Yes, so this has been consolidating since long. After the move in last November, October में जो एक बड़ा move दिया था Tata Power ने, from there it is consolidating. So somewhere over here in April, it tried to make a new high. It broke out from a stage 3 consolidation base, but it again failed along with the market. So in April, the market was also under a bit pressure, and it breached its 50 DMA first, and secondly, it also breached this 200 DMA. So since that point of time, it was trading below its 50 and 200 DMA, but now I think a couple of days back, specifically on Tuesday, yes. So on Tuesday, the stock closed notably above its 200 DMA, the black line over here. So 21 is also very close, and I think currently it is trading above the key moving averages. So technically it's a good setup, but let's wait for some base pattern formation according to O'Neill methodology. But yes, aggressively, if you are looking for just the moving averages, then the stock has reclaimed its key moving averages on a relatively higher volume, and after a decent accumulation at this point of time. Also, when it was consolidating, the volume was a bit lower. So the technical parameters are decent, not a problem. But yes, if it's always better if you get a good base setup. So Naresh has a question that we are not responding. So see Naresh, you can just check our learning article that will give you a better idea on the stages as well as the patterns, because I think it takes entire webinar to discuss the stages and the patterns. So on YouTube also our webinars will be available around the base patterns and the stages. And you can also go to MarketSmith India learning article. Just type in Google and you will get a list of learning articles, and there you will be able to see the stages and different patterns. So we have a separate article for all the patterns, and a separate one for the stages. So maybe you can look around that. Let's take last question, happiest mind, and then we close this session. So yes, over here, after a high somewhere in the September, October last year, it was continuously moving lower. And in fact, not only the happiest mind, but pura IT sector. In the US, the Nasdaq was down around 40-50% from high, from October, November high. Even Indian IT stocks in Nifty IT, सब downtrend में ही था. But I think yes, now it is getting some momentum back. And since last 2-3 sessions, this is what I like. High volume पे बढ़ रहा है, and the closing is near the day's high. Especially yesterday's action was very positive जब उसने 200 DMA retake किया. So now the most important thing is the 200 DMA. So when it has reclaimed such a well 200 DMA on a higher volume and closing near day's high, or you can say in the top quartile of the day's range. So now trading about 200 DMA becomes very crucial. But it will be very aggressive entry at this point of time. So let's have some base setup over here, and the IT sector stabilizes a bit, because even the Nifty IT is trading below some of the key moving averages. So let's wait over there. So a lot of questions are there, guys, but no, there's a limitation of time. So you can always write us on email, and we will try to respond it on the email as soon as possible. So that's it for the today's session. See you tomorrow and the pre-bell with MarketSmith India. And next week also our swing trading team will be there for a session on Thursday. And then again, it's the turn of the Stock Durbar that will come. So till then, thank you very much for joining the session. I hope it was useful, though we were not able to answer some of your queries, but yes, there were a lot of questions, a lot of participants. So we tried to answer as many as possible. So thank you very much for joining. Thanks, Gaurav, for your feedback. Thank you, Imtiaz, Romaldo, Ravi, Saloni. Yes, thanks, guys, everyone, for joining the session.